With the cold weather that we experienced earlier this week, my mind wandered back to those frigid days early last year when a valiant group of builders from this church set about raising a home for William and his family as we partnered with Habitat for Humanity. I can remember one especially chilly and wet morning, huddled under what we had put up thus far of the house, trying to get some sort of shelter as we shivered, eating extremely thin ham sandwiches, and longed for Hotlanta to live up to her name sometime soon. I don't know about you, but it is quite easy for me to slip into despair when it comes to construction projects. My father is a retired engineer, yet evidently all of those genes went to somebody else. Indeed, one of my recurring nightmares is of being sent into the Home Depot by my house to look for a coping foot for a bandsaw or something like that, only to come back with a bag of Skittles and a bottle of Coke Zero to then ask plaintively if this will help the person fixing our abode to cope any better. It is not merely that construction is not my thing. For me, the hardware store is where hope goes to die. The irony of committing myself to at least half of the build days during our Habitat for Humanity project, therefore, was not lost on me. And in those early weeks, it was tempting to wonder what exactly it was we were trying to build together with such a gloriously motley crew of saints. I love the wonderful diversity of this parish, all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life. But perhaps it was not such a good idea after all to give each of them a power tool and the blueprints for somebody else's living room. Except that it was. For we were indeed building something of sheer beauty together. Not because of the precision of each of those 127 nails that I beat into submission along the house's easterly wall, but because, with plenty of good and patient expert help, something of God was being raised up from our hearts to William's family home. That moment of epiphany came to me the morning a dozen or so of us lifted the frame of the house while William stood on the spot where the front door would soon be, as around him what we were building together came into view. A new start. That chance at last to break the pernicious cycle of poverty that degrades too many in this country. Second chance of life. It was simply breathtaking to behold. What are we building together is exactly the question on the lips of the prophet Isaiah as we meet him this morning. As the challenges of a more pluralistic world than the one their forebears had known swirl around the people of Israel in their return from exile, among people worshipping other gods and living in a myriad of other unfamiliar ways. In the chapters preceding the one we hear this morning, Isaiah invites God's people to remember their calling. Maintain justice and do what is right, Isaiah chapter 56. Loose the bonds of injustice, undo the thongs of the yoke, let the oppressed go free, share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house, Isaiah chapter 58. And in the words later echoed by Jesus in the synagogue in Nazareth, bring good news to the oppressed. Bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim liberty to the captives and release to the prisoner. Proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Isaiah chapter 61. What are we to build? The people ask. We are to build a kingdom that looks like that, says Isaiah. Even as the world changes around us, we are to remember our calling, a calling for our ancient forebears, a calling for us now. It is easy, though, for such a calling to get drowned out by other noise. Easy for us to believe too readily that such a vision for human flourishing is beyond us because in many ways we are living today in an extractive world. a world predicated on what we can get from one another, rather than one that trusts in the promise we might see rise to its potential within one another. For many people, an extractive world looks like the only one on offer. I wonder if you were struck as I was by the startling statistic brought into view by the recent government funding crisis that 1 in 8 Americans are food insecure. In the most prosperous nation on earth, that is a shocking indictment of the sort of future we are building together in this, our place in time. Is it not also shocking, though, that 1 in 5 of us is functionally illiterate, that 1 in 10 have no health insurance, and that if you were born into the lowest income group in America today, your life expectancy is 10 years lower than someone born into the highest income group? Too many have come to see this extractive way of life that exponentially rewards the affluent, while others see their wages stagnate or have no wage at all, as simply the way the world has to be. Yet, it is not the world God intends for us to live in. God's vision is generative. As Isaiah imagines, it is one where infants and children and elders will know the full span of their lives. It is a vision of vineyards and fruit trees bringing forth their harvest in due season, of homes for God's people to live in, and labor that will not be given in vain. It is an audacious vision of peace and concord, where the wolf and the lamb shall feed together. Yet even as we hear it, it is too easy to dismiss such a vision as fanciful, as the hope of the religious idealist who knows too little about how the world really is. It is this very vision of God's transformation of the world that has fueled the life of the church from its inception. Over and over in my own life, I have seen the power that gets released when just one individual chooses to trust in the promise of God's generative vision for the future. From the slopes of North India to gang-ridden neighborhoods in LA, to back-to-work programs for men on the street in San Diego, to people of this parish founding schools and opening clinics, I have seen what God will do when we trust in the power of kindness and compassion and mutual relationship. I have seen what happens when people truly believe that the least and the forgotten and the unloved are our first witnesses to the utter beauty of grace alive in them and in us. As we now step into the future of the church in this place, and in our vision for an Eggleston Ministry Centre, seek to build a second front door that will be set open to the life of this city, I invite you to hold fast to the hope that this vision for our future inhabits. A vision for a second front door is a vision that places our core ministries among impoverished children and people in recovery, and those seeking financial and material support, and people who have arrived in this country having fled persecution and trauma in their own, at the center of our life together, and as a way for others to make their life count for the good of their neighbors by joining us here. A vision for a second front door is a vision that seeks to welcome the people of this city in, whoever they may be, to build relationships here and become the person they know deep within they are called to be. It is a vision that trusts that to respect the dignity of every human being is not an idealist pipe dream, but the mandate we receive from the living God. And it is a vision that is vibrantly confident in the church's future exactly because it chooses to open itself to the needs and longings of the world, trusting that God is indeed making all things new. We can build that future together here. It will require of us sacrifice, We will be asked to embrace change, and we will be invited to let go of what has been for the sake of what can be. Let us not settle for the small God of our fears and wants. I am about to create new heavens and a new earth, says the prophetic imagination of Isaiah. Let us trust in the audacity of a loving and gracious God. So do not be afraid. Dust off your hard hat. Blow off the dust from that blueprint. It's time to build a second front door in this place. Amen.